Hello, everyone. Welcome to the Professor Messer CompTIA A+ study group for the month of January. I think I got the date right, January 2012. We've changed the calendar, and so now we're doing things in a brand new year. Thanks for joining us today. We got quite a few people in the chat room, and if you are watching this, you can, of course, join the chat room as well. If you're watching it on Professor Messer/live, then you see there's a chat room at the bottom. You can also join us on Justin TV. Then just search for Professor Messer there, and you can join the live chat there. And I'm watching the chat as it goes by. So as you have questions or you have comments about things that are going on in the study group, feel free to throw your question in there, and I'll be absolutely glad to look at that as well. So some of you that watched the stream prior to us getting things going here, we have kind of a pre-show that we do. I kind of get my ducks in a row. My ducks were all over the place this week, but fortunately, you guys were really good about sending information to me this week. We have a really good Q&A set up, ready to go. This is something I do every month. This is a piece that I like to do that's absolutely free for anybody to join. You can see what's going on in our study group. And as you know, I have this online, absolutely free CompTIA A+ course that I make available to everybody that is constantly updated and constantly to the latest version of what's going on. You can, of course, find that at ProfessorMesser.com. As many people like to have that and take it with them. And if you'd like to purchase a copy to have offline or to have the version that you can copy over to your portable device, or a version that you can have MP3s and play your MP3s as you're driving in the car, they're all included in the package. You can find that at ProfessorMesser.com/download-A+, A-P-L-U-S. So feel free to have a look at those as well. But of course, if you don't need the offline course, you always can watch the absolutely free videos online without any problem whatsoever. Just anything that is available for you to have and be able to use. So this week, we've got a number of things in store. But before we talk about that, one of the things you need to be aware of is we have this ongoing monthly seminar or webinar or live feed or whatever you'd like to call it that we do. But if you already have your A+ certification and you're keeping your continuing education units up to date, this counts towards those. So you can see that participation in an industry event, a seminar, a workshop, a podcast, webinar, conference, you get 1 CEU for each hour spent. So every month you would get an hour. Now, if you have an A+, you can use 4 of these or up to 4 for this particular category of things that you can do. So feel free to use that. You can watch 4 of these and you'd have that. And I would imagine it says participation in, not exactly, it says description of the activity, the location, proof of completion. I don't really have a proof of completion you can do, but if you're in the chat room, I can at least qualify some of you that are here. Now, of course, you can always watch this on the replay afterwards that I post both on YouTube and on ProfessorMesser.com. So there's some opportunities there as well. This was a great month for your questions. Every month, it seems I get more and more and more people signed up, so I get more and more and more questions. So this really was a great month for that. I got a lot of questions this month. I got at least 6.02 times 10 to the negative 23rd. There were just a lot. There were tons of questions in here. I generally sit down the night before and go through every single question that people are asking to find out what you want to know more about or what we should discuss in the study group. And this month, though, the best question I got, the question of the month, was one that was, why is this free? Joe asked, why free? This is a question I get quite a bit. What in the world is all of this, and why is it on the internet for free? What is the catch? Have you lost your mind? So perhaps I have indeed lost my mind. But obviously, the idea behind this is to make as much information as available to as many people as possible and stick it free on the internet. So it's what the internet's there for, in my mind. And of course, these study groups that we do every month will be free as well. So let's step into some of the questions that you had this week about these CompTIA A+ certification. And one of the things I often find is that people will put all kinds of different questions in that deal with all kinds of different CompTIA exams, A+ and Network Plus and Security Plus. Now, obviously, I have this set aside for A+, but if you asked a Network Plus question, I do another one of these study groups I'm doing next week, and I'll be sure to move that question over into that group as well. Our first question comes from SM that says, what tool can be used to test LAN network connections? Now, as you recall in the A+ certification, the last two sections of the A+ are networking and security. And through the years, there has been more networking and more security added every time the A+ exam has been updated. And it tends to get updated about every 3 years. So also in this one, there was quite a few updates in here as well. And network connectivity, especially from the command line, is certainly something that you should be aware of when studying for your A+ exam, when trying to get things ready for your A+ exam. And that's one of the things that I found when I started working with the A+ is there was a lot more at the command line than I was even ready for. It was interesting that there was so much at the command line, but it was a really great opportunity for people to be able to work at the command line and do some things with it. And I think that's always a good place to go. To be able to really understand what's happening. Because if you can do it at the command line, then you're pretty much covered. You can do it easily in the GUI. You've got a good understanding of what's going on, and you may be asked exactly how to do this at the command line. So let's bring this up. I've got a Windows command line here running in a virtual machine that I've got here, and let's do some of these. Now, if we were to do an IP config, and that's a really good one to use. That's one you will constantly use. If you're troubleshooting a computer, the first thing when somebody says, I can't surf, I can't do anything, one of the first things they ask is, what IP address am I going to? And I can see that the IP address that I'm using, 192.168.1.19, is associated with this particular workstation. It has a subnet mask of 255.255.255.0, and my default gateway is 192.168.1.1. Now, when I look at that and I see it, I can see obviously that's important for me to know. So immediately I know the IP address of this device, I know the gateway of this device, and I can start getting a better understanding of what I should be able to see out there. So I know two things. I know my IP address, so I can use something like a ping command, and I'm going to ping 192.168.1.19. I'm going to ping myself. Now, this is not something you would normally have to do. I know that this is something that's sometimes useful to be able to do just to prove that the IP address configuration that you've got running on this machine is working the way you would expect. And you can see here on my view that I pinged 3 of these and then I stopped it from its ping, and it got through all the way. There was no loss whatsoever with that. I'm going to clear the screen here with a CLS, and it's going to update on your screen in just a moment here. I'm going to now ping my default gateway. I'm going to ping 192.168.1.1. I know it's coming out and looking a little funny on your screen, so I'll work with that a little bit. I'm working across 2 different computers here. And you can see that I'm able to ping my default gateway with no problem. So what does that tell us about this network? You know, one of the challenges when troubleshooting is you have to figure out what is working and what is not working. It's a process of elimination to be able to do this, the calculatus eliminatus. So we know that our network connection is working, that we're plugged into, and at least our local machine can ping itself. We can pretty much guess that the networking part of our computer is working okay. Now that I'm able to ping this default gateway, I've communicated out over a wire or fiber to a central router. That router is communicated back to me. So already know, and we can even see in the chat room, people are saying, oh yes, your internal network is good. Jay Kane says, yep, your internal network is probably just fine. At a very bare minimum, you can talk to the device that's going to get you out to the internet, all by using this ping command. This is an incredibly valuable network troubleshooting tool. We almost take it for granted that ping command is something we're able to use. So already we can ping and we know we're talking to that gateway. Well, if I'm talking to that gateway, I should be able then to talk to other devices on the internet. So let's try one. I'm going to do another ping command, and I'm going to ping, one of my favorites is Google. And I'm going to ping Google with a 8.8.8.8. And you can see indeed when the screen refreshes up for you that indeed I was able to ping Google with an 8.8.8.8. So already I can see that, yes, I'm communicating out just fine from an IP address perspective. In fact, I'm communicating all the way out to Google, wherever that Google DNS server happens to be, and all the way back to me. Now, I used 8.8.8.8 because it's easy to remember. It's a Google service that they provide. It's their DNS service. So it's relatively certain that it's going to be available. It's very rare that that would go down, but you can always check another one. 4.2.2.2 is another well-known DNS service that's out there. So you can always ping that one as well and get a feel for that piece too. So 4.2.2.2 is another good one to use. So as Highlander says in the chat room, yes, that tells you IP is working, but if somebody can't surf, there's a lot more involved than just IP. There's DNS you have to worry about. So DNS, of course, is your domain name system. It's the one that takes these names that we're typing in our browser or anywhere else on our computer and figuring out what the IP address is. I just typed in 8.8.8.8. I just knew that was Google. But what if you didn't know it was Google? If we wanted to ping www.google.com, that might be a little bit better. That would give us another way to tell, is this working or is this not working? Let me update my screen here so you can see a little better. I think I'm having the same problems on my screen that my my other screen was having earlier. Let's ping www.google.com. There we go. And let's just see that. So I can now see that I am indeed pinging Google. So that a couple of things happened behind the scenes when I did that. First, the ping command looked at what I typed in, www.google.com. Then it had to find out what the IP address of that was. So it went out to a domain name server and asked, do you have any idea what the IP address of www.google.com? In fact, it came back and said, well, what you really want to go to is www.l.google.com, which happens to be 74.125.227.144. Because it's www.l.google.com, that's something that Google did for us. They have many different servers that you can communicate, .a, .b, .c, .d, .e, and we got to .l. That was the one that was chosen for us. That way, if L happens to go down, we can have another machine pick up the slack. You can go to .m or .n or .o. That's what that L is. I know that's one that I had to go back and look at as well. Now, if you're trying to figure out where did it go to get that, for instance, if we typed in this ping, google.com, and it was not able to resolve this, it said, I have no idea who google.com is. Sorry, I can't do this ping for you. We need more information. Now, if you recall, when we started this, we did an IP config. Let's do another IP config. But at the end of this IP config, I'm going to put a /all associated with it. Let me move up a little bit and you'll see where I did that. Ooh, way up there. So ipconfig /all. And on this ipconfig /all, notice that we get a ton of information associated with that. There's a lot that's here. And the one that I'm most interested in regarding that DNS piece, if you look way down here, has a list for DNS servers, and DNS servers right where my mouse is 192.168.1.1. There it is. So it went out to my default gateway, also happens to be my local DNS server, which actually does a proxy out to DNS. That's a different conversation entirely. But what it's really doing is giving me a place where I can at least ask the question, hey, what's the IP address for Google? 1.1 doesn't know. It had to go ask another DNS server because when my ISP provided me with connectivity, my ISP gave me a listing of DNS servers that I can go to, and they're on. So the question in the chat room is, well, who owns these DNS servers? Well, that's really the challenge, isn't it? So there's a number of ways. Normally, you get your DNS server from your ISP. When you connect to your ISP or when your router connects to the ISP, it gives you that DNS associated with that. It automatically configures it via DHCP. In my environment, I have also chosen to ignore the ISP's DNS server, and I've manually configured OpenDNS in my environment. So anytime I do a DNS query, it goes out to OpenDNS. And the primary reason I did that is because this is at my house and my family is using it, and OpenDNS gives me the ability to manage where people can go on the internet and where they can't go on the internet. That way my kids are protected from seeing things they perhaps should not be seeing. And that way I've got just another line of attack. Of course, the best way, by the way, as an aside, to manage where people are going on the internet is to have conversations with your kids. That's really the best way, but I like to have some technology behind the scenes as well. So that's how all of those things happened. So I typed in the www.google.com. It went out to 1.1 and said, do you have any idea who this is? If that DNS server didn't know who it is, it asked the other DNS server up the way. Ultimately, it has to ask Google, and then that response from Google is cached in all of those DNS servers all the way down the line. So if I had already previously asked where Google was, that would have stayed in my router, in my local router, for a certain amount of time. And then when I did that query again, it doesn't have to go out to the world and figure it out. It's already local. Oh yeah, I already did that for you an hour ago. Here's the IP address. The time behind how long these things stay in a cache is dependent on how it's configured on your DNS and how it's configured on where it originally got this information. So you never know for sure. That's why if you ever look at the IP config information on your computer, it's also cached locally. So you might want to see some of that. If I do an IP config /?, let's go all the way to the top here so you can see this. There's a lot of stuff with IP config. You do not have to know all of these for the exam, so don't get freaked out that all of these things are in there. But there are a number of things you should know about this. You can display the DNS resolver cache right there. So if you wanted to display DNS or refresh all your leases and re-register the DNS name, or be able to flush everything your computer knows about its DNS, you can all do it right here. So don't worry so much about the details of your IP config. Just know that you can do an IP config and an IP config /all, but I wanted to give you a little bit more insight what was in there. So if you're ever interested in learning more about that networking site or getting your Network Plus certification, that's when you're going to want to know a lot more about DNS and step through the entire process and know exactly how it works. That is all documented and available to watch in our Network Plus videos. So we've looked at ping, we've looked at our IP config, but there's another one you should know about for your A+ exam. We looked at where Google was out there in the world, but one of the questions I have is, how do we get to Google and back? How far did it have to go? What did it have to step through to get to Google and back? And in Windows, there's a application called Traceroute, TraceRT, and then you can put www.google.com. And that's when we start hopping through all these hops and where we're going with this. As you step through and look at a trace route, this is all done via ICMP. It's a protocol that's used primarily for management and other capabilities. Not every device in the world is going to be able to communicate back with you, and some devices are not going to have DNS names associated with them. What we are effectively looking at here is every hop, every router we have to get through to get out to Google. So we start on my local device. We go through another, I have actually 2 routers in my environment. I have another router out there in the world. I'm on Comcast, so I go through all of Comcast routers. Then ultimately I get to another ISP and finally out to where I need to go. So we went through 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12 hops just to get to Google. I went through 12 routers just to get to Google, and then 12 routers to get back to me. And it may not take the same route back to me, by the way. It may take a different route back to me. There's redundancy built into this. It's really an interesting thing to look at. And if you're ever trying to get to Google, you can ping your default router, but you can't ping Google. You may want to know, where am I missing a connection? Where am I falling down? You can run something like Traceroute that goes out now to the internet, and it will tell you how far you're able to get before it breaks. So if you're thinking about your A+ exam, know your IP config command, know your ping command, know your traceroute command. And again, you don't have to know all the intricate command line parameters for those. Just understand what they're doing for you and why they are available to you. If you're ever looking at troubleshooting a network, those commands are going to be incredibly useful for you to be able to do what you need to do with that. So let's have a look at our next question on our list. Let me see if I can flip back to this view of my world. Maybe I can, maybe I can't. There we go. Hi, everybody. And let's have a look at the next piece. Now, one of the things I love about getting all these questions is they're all over the place. I get all kinds of questions about many, many different things. And as I'm going through and looking at all the questions that come in, I of course can't do all of them. I get hundreds of them that come in. But one of the things that I like to do is step through a scenario where you're looking at real world how you would use these things. One of the comments I saw recently this week, in fact, in my chat was that, well, the A+ certification just doesn't give you real world abilities. It doesn't give you real world knowledge. And I could not disagree more. There are pieces within A+ that you will use over and over and over again. In fact, the thing we just did, the IP config, the ping, and the trace route are used every day by every network administrator you will ever find. Those are the key tools they have right there at the command line of practically any operating system. And as Ed Milford says in the chat room, you can get traceroute for your phone. You can get ping for your iPhone, and you can run those utilities. They're incredibly valuable. So another incredibly valuable piece that you may want to look at is knowing the RAM specs that you need. So this question comes from S Moon, asked, what are the various RAM specifications we need to know for the A+ exam? So that was a really good question, because if you look at the A+ certification and you downloaded, here's the important tip of your week, download that A+ certification exam requirements document that's out at CompTIA. We're going to talk a little bit about that later. Make sure you grab that and have a look at what you need to know, because you need to know the formats of memory and the different types of form factors. You need to know the types of memory that would go on those form factors. And then you need to know how to use that memory. And I think that's one of the most important things you need to know about is how you use it, how you take advantage of it. So let's say you were going to upgrade memory on a computer. What's the first thing that you would do? Well, obviously, you need to know what that particular computer is going to use for memory. That's going to be a challenge, of course. So you need to look at, if at all possible, figure out what motherboard you have, figure out the make, the model, and grab the manual for that motherboard. Now, one of the challenges you'll run into is a little bit easier these days on the internet, but some of the older computers may not have a manual available for you to use, or perhaps the provider of that motherboard isn't around anymore. Your motherboard companies sometimes will come and go, and if it's an off-brand motherboard, you may not have a website to go to any longer, and who knows where the manual is. If you're like me, you have no idea where those things happen to be. You could, of course, open the case and look at the memory itself. But if you've ever looked at memory chips, I think I have some here somewhere. So you've got these memory modules. There's no writing on these. There's sort of a writing. It's some cryptic language that's on the chip itself, but that really doesn't tell me a lot of what I need to know. I know who made the memory. There's sometimes a sticker on the back of it. I know that's hard to see. And you certainly aren't going to see the details of this sticker. Let me make this bigger so you guys can see this piece. So on this memory module is a sticker. See if I can get right in the middle. It's not going to zoom up on that and make it very fine for you to see. But on that sticker are some details. And my sticker says simple technology, and it has some part numbers on it. But I'm looking at this. This doesn't even make sense. It's got a 90,000-20596-03A. Maybe I could cross-reference that. Maybe. Against a list. I certainly wouldn't trust a sticker on a piece of memory to determine what I'm going to put into my computer. So that's one of the challenges. Yes, that's a SODIMM for those in the chat room that were asking about that. You can, of course, go out and look at all of the different memory formats out on that memory format video that I have. So you can see that piece as well. So yes, I just have memory kind of stuck in a drawer right there. Doesn't everybody? So what I did was I pretended I had a computer and I wanted to upgrade the memory. And in this particular case, I went out to Dell and I picked one of their brand new systems so that we could step through the process together. And you could see, what does it take to be able to upgrade memory in a computer and you to feel very solid and secure that the memory that you're acquiring, that you're purchasing, that you're getting from somewhere is the right memory for that computer. So here's what I did. I went out to and looked at a Dell Inspiron 620. It's one of their bigger, badder machines, got the XPS logo on the side. That's a nice looking computer. And I went to the manual and I looked at what's the manual say about memory. This was a very interesting thing that I did last night. And so let's look at this. My memory says that there's 2 user accessible connectors for my memory modules. My memory module capacities are 1, 2, and 4 gig. I need to use 1333 megahertz DDR3 non-ECC memory only. That's a mouthful. So the 1333 megahertz is the bus speed or the memory speed that you need for this particular computer. The DDR3 is the type of memory. Non-ECC is your non-error correcting memory. So this is not like a server where you would use ECC or you would even have the option. In fact, it tells you don't even have the option. You cannot use ECC memory with this particular computer. The minimum memory is 1 gig. The maximum memory is 8 gig. And then there's this that says your possible memory configurations are 2, 3, 4, 6, and 8 gig. So already their manual is throwing me off. It's already said your minimum memory is 1 gig, but your possible memory is 2, 3, 4, 6, and 8. One's not in there. So already there's an issue I have with the manual. So I'm a little concerned. So I need some cross-referencing here. Now, what I also found interesting is I not only looked at the user guide for this computer, I went and I grabbed the service manual too that describes the process you would go through for installing the memory. And what I found was more information. That's this little tidbit that's at the bottom in bold. Do not install ECC. We knew that, said before, or DDR3U memory modules. That was not in the manual. That was not in the user guide. It was in the service manual. The service manual told me no DDR3U. Now, DDR3U is a type of memory. It's still DDR3 memory, but it uses a different voltage, a lower voltage. It's made to be more green. Instead of using 1.5 volts, I think it's using 1.25 or something like that. You don't even need to know DDR3U type for the A+ exam. You do need to know what DDR3 is, but not DDR3U. So already you've learned something new today. How about that? So I've got this. I'm still not certain. I'm not completely sure about this. So what I want to do is cross-reference this. And one of my favorite places to go to cross-reference memory, in fact, one of my favorite places to go to learn how memory works is a website called Crucial.com. And all I did in Crucial.com is they have this thing called a memory advisor. And I stuck in Dell Inspiron 620. Tell me what my options are. And it came up with a big list of options that were available. In fact, on here, plenty of stuff available. So I said, I want to upgrade this to 8 gig, or I want to put at least 8 gig in this box. In fact, it says my maximum here is 8 gig density. So if I look at a kit for 8 gig, I'm going to zoom up on that so you can see it pretty well. For $51.99, I can get 8 gig of memory in here. But look at the specifications on this memory. Let's step through each one of these so you can see what these differences are. So it tells us that we need DDR3. I wish I had a mouse that I could build on here. My mouse shows up after I show and play this. That's not what I want to do. Let me see if I can have it go along with this piece as we go here. I probably can't, but give it a shot anyway. So we've got this 8 gig kit. It says it needs to be DDR3 and it needs to be PC3-12800, 12800. That's the memory module name for it, is a PC3 12800. That is your theoretical throughput for the memory, and the PC3 means that it's DDR3 memory. If you recall back a few months ago, we did the process of calculating that out, and the DDR3/PC3 type memory and what those differences were. In fact, just underneath that, you can see it's DDR3-1600. Is that speed of that particular memory type. Well, I think that matches, if I go back a couple, that you see the memory type here is 1333 megahertz, and yet this one here is 1600. So there's a difference there, but you can always go faster. You can't go slower. If you go slower, you have problems associated with that. So this faster memory should work just fine on this particular system. It's got a CL that equals 11. That is our CAS latency. That's another one you should know. And that latency, the higher that number, the more latency is going to be involved between the time that we ask for information in memory and the time that that's brought back to our system to be able to use that information. So that's how long when we ask memory, can you go get me that piece of memory? It goes out and grabs that, and your CL number is a number that you can use to help understand what that latency is going to be. There's actually a calculation that uses that 11 to actually determine how many nanoseconds that is, but it's just giving us a number about the latency associated with that. We may have to match that latency number in our BIOS, so it's an important number to know about. This is unbuffered memory, and it's non-ECC memory. Again, that non-ECC keeps coming up. So already I'm getting some qualification that what the manual told me and what Crucial's telling me, those look like they're about the same. This is 1.5 volt memory. All of these DDR3s are 1.5 volt, unless it's the DDR3U, which is not 1.5 volts. So far that matches here as well. And then you've got this weird number, which is a 512 meg times 64. A 512 meg by 64 is what that really is. The 512 meg and the 64 refer to the width and the depth of the memory. And for us and what we're doing, not that important. It's a nice qualification of how this works, but what it's saying is that each memory chip on here is 512 bits or million bits wide. It's 64 bits deep. So if you multiply 512 meg times 64, that's the total number of bits that you can fit inside of this memory. If you divide that by 8, it's the number of bytes, and what it will come out to be is, for these memory modules, 4 megabyte memory modules, which is what those are. It's 4 two 4 gigabyte memory modules on here. So all of those things match in that recommended upgrade what I thought should work properly on that website. And if I was looking at buying some memory and I was looking at upgrading that machine, I feel pretty good at this point that I've picked the right thing, that I've got exactly the right memory. The manual says that it should be at least 1333. This is 1600 megahertz for its clock speed. It's non-ECC, and Crucial says it's good. And one good thing about Crucial, I've used them often. They're not a sponsor, or they not giving me any money. I just like them as a company. They have provided. I've bought memory from them, got the wrong memory, and I said, I need to send this back. They go, oh yeah, just ship it back. Here's your RMA number. No problem. I've never had a problem with these guys. So even if you do get it from Crucial and it doesn't seem to be the right piece, maybe you made a mistake with the version or the type of computer, just return it and get some more from Crucial. They'll be glad to help you. And as I mentioned, you can't always know what goes in this machine based on this. But let's say you didn't have Crucial to rely on. You didn't have the manual to rely on. You had nowhere to go to rely on this. In fact, you don't have your Crucial or your Newegg or your favorite memory purchaser to go to. There are some things you can look at in the BIOS and some things you can look at on the memory itself. Now, I told you, let me grab my memory again. Let's grab this memory. We look at this memory and there's a lot of little chips on here. And on here is really an important chip, and you can't see this on the one that I'm holding, but if you have a memory module of your own, grab that memory module, because on that memory module is a tiny little chip way down here at the bottom called a serial presence detect chip, an SPD chip. And I have one on mine as well. You can't see, it's a little box right there at the top. It's blurry, but it's on there. That's a picture of it right there. I don't think it's of this module, but you have one on yours as well. Yeah, don't unplug your machine to do this. You need a memory module that's out right now. That serial presence detect chip is very, very useful because you can load a program like CPU-Z. So just Google up CPU-Z and you'll be able to load this up, and it will tell you what type of memory is in this computer in this slot based on what that serial presence detect chip is telling the system. So here's one from a computer. This is not from that same Dell. This is from a different computer, but this is DDR2 memory that I had in this computer. These were 1 gig modules with a max bandwidth. They were PC2-5300 on the bandwidth that we had here. The manufacturer of the memory, the part number of the memory, the serial number of the memory is right there, and a bunch of timing tables, including the CAS latency, that CL number that we were talking about is listed right there as well. Boy, that's a lot of good details. And if you're ever in a position where you're trying to troubleshoot what type of memory is in the system, how fast is this memory, is what is installed in this computer match what the manual says it should be, there's a good sanity check for you. So some really good stuff that you can pull up in things like CPU-Z, because all it's doing is querying the SPD and telling you exactly what you should have available for the memory pieces. So a lot of great stuff. And CPU-Z, as Dimitri has said in the chat room, very important point, absolutely free, absolutely no cost whatsoever to be able to do that for CPU-Z. So some good stuff there. So here's a question that came up about what I should know about the operating systems themselves. So we've talked a little bit about memory and hardware. Let's talk a little bit about software. So the question is, for the exam, FL writes, do you have to know exactly where in Windows you can find all of the different utilities? This is a common question because there are a lot of utilities in Windows, a lot. And one of the challenges you have, of course, is that you are often asked on the exam, I need to launch computer management. Where do I find that? Go. You hit the start button. You hit something. You hit something else. You hit finally find it. You have to know that path, ideally, because you may be asked about that on the exam. And if you think about it, that's a bit of a challenge. I mean, that's a lot to know about what you need to be able to do to find all of these different things. That's a ton of information, but don't be overwhelmed by this. There are only a certain number of utilities that you need to know about. They are well documented in the CompTIA exam requirements document. And once you start playing around with them, you get very familiar with where they happen to be. And you can start even using a list of things that you happen to know that are in your administrative groups, that are in your control panel, that are underneath certain areas of your computer. you can start finding them very easily. So this is one of those scenarios where you could do it through rote memorization to understand where those things are. But you'll notice if you use a lot of hands-on and you use computer management all the time, and you're constantly going to device manager, you're starting to understand where that happens to be, and you can almost find it automatically at that point. So don't be overwhelmed by these total number of things that are going to be thrown at you for all of these different utilities. What you'll find is once you start doing some hands-on, once you start using these as a matter of course in the normal management of your computer, you'll start to automatically know where they are. And when you get that multiple choice exam that says, how can I find computer management? Here are 4 choices. You should be very, very easily able to cross out the ones that make no sense whatsoever because you're so accustomed now to going to that utility. Or if you need to just do rote memorization, maybe that's a good choice for a flashcard that you might have. Another question that came up from Muhammed R was about computer software troubleshooting. I want to clear all software trouble. I'm with Muhammad on this one. And this is one of the challenges with the A+ exam. And one of the things I want to bring up about the A+ certification is there's an entire section on troubleshooting. And it's well documented exactly the things that you need to be able to troubleshoot. And the problem, of course, in any operating system is there are a huge number of things that can go wrong. Things can go wrong with your hardware. Things can go wrong with a boot record. They can go wrong with the files that are in the system area of your operating system. They can go wrong with the applications you're using. So one of the challenges you have when using any Windows environment is being able to understand what's going on. And one of the first places I tend to go these days is I want to see more about the operating system itself. And one that most people, they're missing or they're discounting or they're completely forgetting are there in my Windows desktop here. I'm going to go into my control panel. This is Windows 7. And I'm going to go to my administrative tools. I know this is kind of choppy on your screen. I'm going to try to clean things up here for you guys to see this a little better. The tools that are in here, the ones that I start looking at and I want to know what's going on is Event Viewer. You ever be in those situations where somebody has said to you, I'm having a problem with my computer, and it gives me an error message. Can you fix that? Well, what was the error message? What was the problem with your computer? I'd like to know more about the problem you were having. Obviously, the issue is you don't always have someone who's writing down every error message. But in your event log, you can go back now and view everything that has happened with software and the operating system on this computer. For instance, if I go to my Windows logs and I click System, here are all of the records. And I realize I'm in a very small resolution here, so it may be difficult to see. But as this system is booted up, as it's doing different things, I'm just going to scroll down. Most of these are related and are informational. But here's a virtual disk service that started up. Were there problems associated with that or not? Nope, this one worked just fine. It was an informational. Here's a service that started up for my service control manager. If I scroll up a little bit more, there's my user plug and play, and a certain device was found and automatically loaded into the operating system. If there are any errors or problems, you will also see them listed here. For instance, administrative events. Here are some errors that occurred. An activation content generation failed for a media coder codec that I was playing around with on this particular virtual machine. So when somebody says, I was doing something yesterday and I had a problem, there's a software issue, what was that? Well, it's probably in your event viewer. Even if you get a blue screen, your blue screen information is written to the event viewer. If somebody says, I got 3 blue screens yesterday, what was that? You don't have to wait for it to happen again. Just go to your event viewer. It will be listed in there. You can get the details. And as Jay Kane is saying in the chat room, you can now look up the code. Or if it happens right then and you don't have the event viewer there, take a picture of it with your cell phone. Have something there. Or if you're not there, go to your event viewer. It's all listed there and available for you. Don't forget about that event viewer. Very, very useful to have. Windows 7 event viewer works differently than Windows XP event viewer. Be familiar with how both of those work. They're really, really going to help you when you start troubleshooting some of those pieces. Okay, let's have a look at the next piece, the next section that we're going to look at and deal with. I think I have another slide here. One of the things that's nice about this user group is I get to get together with all you guys and do some of these things for free. But one of the nice parts about this is I have a sponsor for for the user group. This is GTS Learning. I was over in London recently in November. We got to spend time in their office and talk with them about what they're doing. And we're really doing some really interesting things with training for A+ and being able to use the technologies that are available on the internet. You've all seen my videos on ProfessorMesser.com. I've got all of these things that I've created. And one of the challenges people often ask me is, how can I get a book that matches what you're trying to do? And what GTS Learning has done for me is they've given me their materials and said, here, build your videos based on this. Just take everything you're doing for free for the world and build videos based on our materials. And what we're doing, and you may have seen this in our Security Plus that we recently did, we're actually sticking the videos in the book itself. That's something you don't get everywhere else. You don't get anywhere else. In fact, at this point, we're putting QR codes right in the book. So as you're flipping through the book and you're on a section that deals with Event Viewer, you can put your phone right up to the book and suddenly my video starts playing. All because we integrated the book with the content. So you don't have to search around my videos and match up what you're reading in your book. It's all in one place. And we'll be doing that shortly for the A+ as well. It's some really nice materials as well. One interesting part about their materials that are different than the others that you may find out there from Amazon or anywhere else is that all of these materials are authorized and checked by CompTIA. They go through every single one of the GTS Learning books. They examine all of those pieces, and you're able to get a confirmation from CompTIA that says, you know what, these books are perfect to be able to learn your A+ certification. You aren't going to have to worry at all about that piece. We have checked this book and confirmed and given it our check mark that says this book is absolutely something that will help you pass your A+ exam. If you'd like to download a free copy of this and try it for yourself, you can find it at ProfessorMesser.com/A+book. And if you have any questions about that, it takes you right to the GTS Learning website. You can also ask them questions right there. A great bunch of folks. You'll be really glad that you grabbed that book. So let's look at another question that comes in quite a bit. In fact, we had a question about this on earlier this week in the chat room that's on Professor Messer. If you've ever gone to ProfessorMesser.com, right there at the bottom, it's a chat that's always available. So any video you watch on the website, you can talk with other people who are also on the website at that time, and they're also watching videos and doing other things. So one of the questions I often get, and this was one that comes up so much that I thought I'd put Daniel's in here, what is a good starting point for someone who's just trying to transition from something like blue-collar construction to now IT type management, something dealing with computers or what we call white collar type work? And I get this all the time because this is one of the challenges in our economies today around the world, is that things are changing. Technology is certainly becoming much more important. There are things that are happening within older types of automaking or steel making or transportation or any of these other types of vertical environments. Now people want to be able to do more with technology. How do you make that jump? And it's fantastic that the A+ is there to help you do that. A lot of the people who are hiring IT professionals are looking for certain things. They're looking for experience, they're looking for certifications, and they're looking for an overall knowledge or feel from you on how well you're able to communicate. They're looking for other things as well, but that's really the top three. When you sit down on an interview, there's eye contact, there's the way that you answer questions, there's things that you're asking of the other people that you have to think about, because that's an important part, especially for a first job. The first job that you generally think about in IT is one on the help desk. That was my first job in a big insurance company when I started, was in the help desk area, where I had to fix problems with connectivity to the mainframe and the printer is not working and this hard drive needs to be upgraded, because it's a great place to learn. It's a great place to understand the business that you're in. It's a great place to understand what types of problems you're going to run into. So the A+ is really designed to do that. So my recommendation to most people is, whether you get the A+ certification or not, get the A+ book and read through it. You'll probably also want to get your certification, but you'll at least understand at that point, what do people need to know at a bare minimum to be able to start doing some of these IT technologies. Now, once you have your A+, you then can go other places. Maybe networking is interesting for you. Maybe you have an eye on security, so you'd like to learn networking first and then learn more about security. Maybe databases is a place that really interests you. Huge amounts of data, collecting that data, querying that data. There's database management that you could jump into. Maybe file server management or server management in general really interests you. Being able to keep these machines up and running, build your own servers, manage a data center. There's an entirely different group of certifications and set of knowledge you should know for that. But they all have this A+ as a starting point. And I think anybody who's looking at getting an A+ certification has already seen this aspect of it. It's a fantastic starting point. And one of the advantages of IT is you can really go anywhere and do almost anything. So whenever you're looking at moving from something that's not technology to something that is technology, an A+ is a great place to start. Even if you don't end up getting the certification, grab an A+ book and look through it. That's the type of thing that you'll need to know. And if you're doing, if you're putting together cars, or you're driving a tractor trailer, or doing anything that's non-technical, you've already gone through the process of knowing how to do some of these things. You've already worked with computers. You probably have one at home. All of us have taken ours apart at this point. Now you can start doing the same things with what you're doing in those pieces as well. So this is a question I got that deals with, it's constant that comes in. What's the secret to passing the A+ exam one time, very first time? Pass it. What do I do? Boy, that's a really good question. That's one that I get an awful lot. Now, there are no guarantees to be able to do any of these things, but there are a few things you can do to help make sure that what you are doing is giving you the best possible opportunity to pass the very first time. So I'm loading up on my screen here, CompTIA website, and I'm going to take you through. Let me move you back over so you can see what's going on here. So if I go to my CompTIA website, and I'll zoom up on this so you can see this a little bit better. I think I will. I got a lot going on this laptop right now. There we go. So on the CompTIA website, first thing I would recommend doing, going into the certification that you're interested in knowing about. So here are all the CompTIA certifications. We're going to choose A+ to be able to see that. And on the A+ certification, there's a number of things here. I want to see what the exam covers. That's a pretty important one. It is remarkable to me how few people have grabbed the A+ certification requirements. They don't know what's on the exam before they go and sit for them. That's crazy. You want to know what you're going to be asked, and probably more than any other certification, CompTIA gives you a detailed view of exactly what you need to know. All you have to do is put in your details here. Let's put in my name, and I'll put in my James at professormesser.com. And you also have to put in, one of the other ones here is the country. And if I hit U a few times, I can scroll down. And for U is USA. You don't have to put in these other pieces, but you could. And I'm going to choose A+, and I'm going to get my exam objectives. Boom. So here's my exam objectives that I can get. I can get the 227.01 and the 227.02. And you've got Spanish versions as well, if you wanted to do that. And I'm just going to choose the 701 and download it. The 701 exam requirements are right here now. I'm in Chrome, so you don't have to have a PDF viewer to view this. Isn't that nice? Are you Chrome users? So here is an example of what you need to know. There's the hardware. Look at the level of detail you get that you need to know about. This makes a fantastic check mark that you can go through before you sit for your exam. Go through this and check off the things you know about. This is a fantastic checklist to be able to do a sanity check before you walk in the door. Compare and contrast memory types. Here's DDR3. We were just talking about that. Here's the different types, different speeds and what they mean, DDR3, DDR2. So all of that is right here in the certification requirements document. Take advantage of that. Microsoft doesn't give you anywhere close to this on their Microsoft certifications. It's just really impressive that you have that available to you to be able to take advantage of that. So make sure that you do. And if you want to talk about what resources you need, watch the videos, get a really good A+ book. And if you can get something that's a QA guide, like a lot of the ones that are out there will have a full book of questions. There's an exam cram book I really like a lot, or just look at the questions that are in some of your A+ books that you'll get. There's some great ones online as well. You have to be careful about the ones online, but generally the ones in your book are pretty darn good. to look at. So that will get you exactly where you need to be for your A+ certification exam. And one of the things that is brought up in the chat room from IT for All is that your experience with working with these things really helps too. Reading about installing memory is one thing. Actually doing the memory installation is a completely different thing. So if you have an old computer, if there's one that's broken, you can buy a lot of really old and broken computers on eBay, pull it apart, and pull some memory out, put the memory back in, and pull out the cards and have a look at them and see what it takes to swap out a power supply, and grabs a multimeter and check the power that's going into your computer very carefully. You don't want to mess around with power, but that's one of those things where you need to know exactly what you're doing. And I give you step-by-step throughout all of my videos on exactly how you go out and do all of those things. So another question that came in about the A+ exam, what are the differences between the 2009 and 2011 A+ tests? We're still asking this question in 2012. There was a minor change made to the A+ exam requirements document in January of 2011, a year ago. And I documented this in a blog entry, and you've already guessed in the chat room, Dart G33K already said, yep, it's Windows 7 mostly. IP6 was added, and there were a few other things added to the exam. It was very minor. They're all documented in your exam requirements documents that you just saw. So you can go through that list. If you go through on my website, if you Google Professor Messer, CompTIA A+ changes 2011, there's a blog entry I wrote. You can also just click the blog entry on my website. It's in that listing of those that documents exactly the differences between them. So you can see what's different there. That might help you as well, but it's all documented now. And we know that that piece is there. One of the questions along those same lines is along the pieces of Windows 8 is on the horizon. We've all seen the stories about Windows 8. There are videos on Windows 8 all over YouTube. You can see what's coming. When do you expect to see CompTIA add Windows 7 to the exam objectives? Matt, I just said the exam objectives a year ago were already added to the A+ certification. People don't know this. They aren't reading that exam requirements document. Go download the exam requirements document. I think I've said it 12 times now, and I really do mean it, because it will tell you how can you pass an exam that you have no idea what's on the exam. You must download that documentation, have a look at it to be able to understand that. Windows 7 has been on the A+ exam for a year. You will get asked about Windows 7 on the exam in most probable cases. So that's one thing you want to be sure to look at to understand. Now, in a more practical sense, now that you've looked at the exam requirements, you know your Windows 7 and your Windows XP and your Windows Vista and your Windows 2000, because all of those are on the A+. Now, should you take both this 227.01 and the 227.02 at the same time? What do you think? Now, my recommendation is not to do it. My recommendation is to separate them by at least a day. And there are some caveats to this, but let me tell you my thoughts along these lines. So both tests are very similar in how they are asked and the process you go through. In fact, they're identical. You sit in a room, you look through the pretest, you click go, you've got a certain amount of time, you click grade it, you get your certification. It's really quite simple to do it. Both tests use exactly the same multiple choice format. Both tests have the same look and feel on the screen. It's the same process. Now, if you've never sat for one of these types of exams before, it's a new process. So I always recommend, if you have no experience in taking some of these certification exams, go sit for the first one. Go through the process, because the process is just as important as anything else. And as you start looking at these exams and working with these exams, one of the things that you find is that you become more and more familiar with actually using and looking at the exam and understanding the process. So I generally sign up, and then I take my first test on one day, and then I go ahead and I schedule the next one for the following day. And that way I can now sleep on it. I can now pull in everything and think about everything I learned from that first step. And tomorrow when I step in, the process that I got down, it's the same thing all over again. I'm signing in, I'm sitting down, it's the same room. It's more comfortable for me. If I'm having to shotgun this information and really cram it in there and hope I do the best I can, I don't want to have to be burdened with that. So sometimes having both of them on different days is important. Now, my caveat, if you're one of the kind of test taker that doesn't do well with taking tests, with it's the buildup and the nervousness, and you're walking in. There's not a lot of people that are this crazy about taking tests, but a few I've talked to are really sensitive to this. It's really difficult for you to just walk in the door. Well, then schedule them both at the same time. And that way you don't have to go through that stressful process 2 days in a row. The other thing you might want to think about, if you are familiar with this process, you're really confident about the material, it doesn't bother you at all to walk in and take the exam. That's another situation where you could do back to back. But generally, for the vast majority, the 90% of us that are doing this test, I really recommend you take it for the first one on day one, the second one on day two. Split them apart. You'll be happier in the end because you did that. The next question we got was, will the CompTIA A+ 2012 exam only include more Windows 7 than 2009, or will there be other core differences? I don't know. You got me. It's a really good question. We can speculate at this point. I have no particular association with CompTIA. They've asked me to speak at some of their events before, but I'm not a CompTIA member. I don't work behind the scenes with them. I don't have really contacts I communicate with at CompTIA. I know that there have been rumors, and certainly we are expecting a new version of the CompTIA exam to come along in 2012. We don't know when that will be. It probably will be a number of months, but even when they release that, you'll still be able to take the old test for a number of months, so you're not locked out of that. But what's going to be new on the exam? I have no idea. No guess whatsoever. I have some ideas of what I would like it to be. I would like for them to get rid of 2000 requirements on the exam because it's not quite the requirement that it used to be 3 years ago. Maybe that will disappear. I think there should be more information about virtual environments, using virtual machines, virtual servers, and what that means. You've already seen me use one here today. I think there should be a lot more focus on security, and I expect there will be. Certainly more focus on networking. That's one of the things that I think is really important about the A+, is it's constantly changing and constantly updating, and they try to keep it as fresh as possible. I don't know what the format's going to be. I don't know anything about it, but we will all figure it out together. If you find out first, you let me know, because I see these things when they're posted on CompTIA. I have no special knowledge of when things are posted. So if you see something new out there, send me an email. Go to professormesser.com, click contact me at the top of the page. Let me know. Those are things I'd like to know in there as well. So there's some miscellaneous questions I got this month. That I think that covers the basis of what I was there. And I can see some of you in the chat room as well have used some of these virtual environments and looking at some of those pieces. You agree with, I think, some of the things that we're seeing in that A+ certification. Well, we've gone through another hour of our A+ certification study group for January of 2012. Before we split up here, I want to make sure you're aware that you can find us always on Facebook at professormesser.com/Facebook. You can see there is a Twitter at professormesser.com/Twitter. There is on Google Plus. I'm trying to do more with Google Plus, professormesser.com/Google Plus. I do almost everything notification wise on Twitter, though. You will find a lot of things on Twitter that you'll be able to see what's going on. So that's one really good place that you can go to get those pieces and know what's available or what I'm doing. Twitter's a great place because I know you're going to get the notifications associated with that. If you had to pick one of those three, I'd pick Twitter. Also, our sponsor this month is GTS Learning. If you want to know more about this, their books, you want to download an absolutely free book that you can see what all of this is about, you can download it at professormesser.com/A+book, APLUS book, and you can download their free version of that. And of course, I thank you for what you are doing here as well. Our next study group is a Network Plus study group that we're doing a week from today at the same time. So if you want to watch live, that is going to be January the 14th at 1 p.m. Eastern time. You'll be able to see that. If you ever want to know when we're doing these, I do a podcast live every week called What a Week, and I do these study groups at least once a month. You can see more about those at professormesser.com/calendar. And of course, thank you everyone for attending today. We will see you next time on the Professor Messer A+ Study Group.